Hello everyone and welcome to this week's game devlog on the Blue Dots Expedition, a turn-based strategy flight game. Unlike last month, I got a lot of cool stuff to show. In order to show you all this, I actually want to tackle how the general feedback loop is going to go from mission to mission. So let's get into it. First, I should give some more information on how this all fits in narratively. For most of the game, the player will play as Maris, a tactician recently given command of an operation to move the planet to another galaxy similar to our solar system to assure the survival of humanity from the expanding sun. But the journey will take over 2 million years of strategizing and existential questions she and the rest of the pilots will encounter. That is the briefest pitch of the plot I can muster, something I've been polishing and working on for a while now in writing and artistically. This is where the gameplay loop comes in. Generally at the start of each mission, it'll start in the hub world where most of the narrative happens. Obviously the world is under construction right now. It mostly serves as a place where players can talk to other characters, and it's also a breather after the strategy screen and flight mode and see the story develop. If a pilot dies in flight mode, they won't appear in the hub world anymore, so keep that in mind if you're a fan of story. When you talk to the main NPC, it'll bring up the also familiar pilot select, and we'll start the mission. The strategy screen and the flight mode is well grounded at this point, wherein you move your ships bit by bit, meet a group of enemies head on, go into 3D flight mode, and rinse and repeat until the mission is over when you destroy all the enemies. And in the process, Earth isn't harmed. I've made 2 basic levels that are going to be improved upon when I show them for feedback and general playtesting. First is the basic level where it teaches you the strategy screen and the flight mode, but to avoid overloading the player too much, they can't move the Earth in this level. In the second level they can, and it's just asteroids. I even made it so that you could get an achievement for not going in the battle. Speaking of going into battle, I've been using the same ship for almost a year now to demonstrate the new special moves I made last time. I'm happy to say that I have new designs implemented both in 2D and 3D. 2D was obviously the easier of the two. I've had these ship designs for a while now. The ship with the dash attack, shield attack, and the homing missile special moves were simple. They only needed to be modeled once. But the twins shooter had to go through a couple iterations. The first iteration I made on paper is freaking awful. I didn't even bother to model it, I hate it. The second model was a lot better, but after I modeled it and it was in full 3D and I tested it in the engine, it looks too much like the Hoth ships from Empire Strikes Back. And I'm aware that it's near impossible to escape the influence of Star Wars when it comes to designing fighter pilot ships in sci-fi, but I also didn't want to go with the sleek, direct bird style of the Star Fox games either. So what if I move the wings a little bit up, move them back a bit, and have the extra bullets come out of the wings, and have the wings rotate? That was the basis of the third version of the ship, and now it looks a hell of a lot better. And I'm glad I don't have to look at the same ship over and over again now. Speaking of looking, you may or may not have noticed that I added a special little effect, a slight little pixelation via shader. I don't have enough skill as a 3D artist to make more defined environments, and a good way to simplify it and also to get a bit of nostalgia is to pixelate it, but not too much. Think like the PS1 era, specifically N2O in the flight mode and sweet coded in the hub world. A mixture of 2D and 3D where the sprites are nice and sharp and crisp and the environment is pixely, or if you want to go by artist speak, a little busy. That way the player's eye always goes to the player and has something to grab on. It's almost like the pixel equivalent of the masking effect that a lot of comic book artists and illustrators use to their advantage, which you can also argue is a form of negative space. Plus it adds an extra layer of identity for the player in a sense. I've tested this before with a combination of cameras and a couple of game jams to make sure this worked. And this all comes from an example that isn't going to be one-to-one when it comes to games, but I think there's some truth in it. According to Scott McCloud in his seminal book Understanding Comics, and I quote, "Something as simple and as basic as a cartoon, thus when you look at a photo or realistic drawing of a face, you see it as the face of another, but when you enter the world of a cartoon, you see yourself. This combination allows readers to mask themselves in a character and safely enter a sensually stimulating world. One set of lines to see, another set of lines to be. I love that freaking book so much. Read it if you haven't already, even if you don't like comics. Going back to the game, at this point in the feedback loop, going back to the hub world, you have to win and accomplish the mission. Then you continue with the narrative. Some more story happens, explore a bit, characters will cryo-freeze themselves until the next mission starts in the next few thousand years. Rinse repeat until end of game. Won't this get repetitive after a while? And you would be right, but I added an extra mechanic players have to consider. This one I've also been planning for a while now. The game will be recording how many times you've used a specific character and will add it to an algorithm where smaller missions that take place on a loading screen will age them up based on your numbers. Use that character too much, they'll die of old age if they don't die in flight mode. So you, and by extension Morris, have to choose carefully who to send out in regards to what's going on in the mission, but also for longevity, so be careful. Next time, like I said last time, I just hope to be content complete by the end of the year, and time seems to be moving faster and faster as I speak. So that'll be it for this month. Let me know if you have any questions or feedback. Take care of yourselves and have a good week.